The rain fell in sheets the day we buried Dad, turning the cemetery grounds into a muddy expanse that seemed to mirror the darkness settling over our family. I stood apart from my sister Karen and her husband Mark, watching as they huddled together under an oversized black umbrella, their whispered conversations punctuated by Karen's occasional sobs that seemed almost theatrical in their timing. I had always been the quiet one, the younger sibling who preferred books to confrontation, solitude to the drama that seemed to follow Karen wherever she went.
Dad understood that about me.
He understood a lot of things that went unspoken between us, communicated through shared silences over morning coffee and the comfortable quiet of working side by side in his woodshop. The funeral was sparsely attended. Dad had been a private man, and in his final years after Mom passed, he'd become even more reclusive. A handful of neighbors showed up, along with his old business partner Tom, who gripped my hand with genuine sympathy and told me Dad had been proud of me. Karen had organized everything with the efficiency of a military campaign: the service, the flowers, the burial plot. She'd barely consulted me, sending terse text messages about decisions already made, presenting them as courtesy rather than collaboration. "We need to talk about the house," Karen said to me after the service, catching my elbow as I headed toward my car. Her voice had that edge to it, the one she used when she'd already decided how things were going to go, and was merely going through the motions of including me. "Can it wait?" I asked, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day and the 3-hour drive I'd made from my apartment in the city. "I was planning to head back tonight." "This is important, Jamie." She glanced at Mark, who gave her an encouraging nod. "The house. Dad's estate. We need to get things sorted out quickly. Mark and I have been thinking we could move in there, save on rent, and I'll buy you out of your half. Eventually. When we can afford it." I felt the first stirring of unease in my gut. "Buy me out?" "Karen, Dad just died yesterday.
Can we not do this right now?"
Her eyes hardened. "Don't be dramatic. We're family. We need to be practical. The house can't just sit empty, and you're hours away in that tiny apartment. You don't need it. We do. Mark's lease is up in 2 months, and this is perfect timing." Perfect timing. Our father was barely in the ground, and she was talking about perfect timing. "I need to think about it," I said, pulling my arm free. "And we need to actually go through Dad's papers, see what he wanted." "What he wanted was for his family to be taken care of," Karen interrupted. "And that's what I'm trying to do. I'll send you some paperwork to sign. Just trust me on this, okay?" "I know what I'm doing." I should have argued more forcefully. I should have insisted we sit down together and go through everything properly. But I was grieving, exhausted, and conflict with Karen had always left me feeling drained and defeated. So I nodded vaguely, got in my car, and drove back to the city, trying to ignore the feeling that something was very wrong. Over the next few weeks, Karen moved quickly. She packed up Dad's belongings, our memories, with ruthless efficiency, sending me a few boxes of what she deemed my stuff, without asking what I might want to keep. She and Mark moved into the house, and when I called to discuss coming by to go through Dad's things myself, she always had an excuse. They were renovating. The place was a mess. She'd already organized everything. She'd saved me the trip. The paperwork she mentioned never arrived, which I found odd but also somewhat relieving. Maybe she'd realized how inappropriate her timing had been. Maybe she was going to approach things more reasonably. Then, 3 months after Dad's funeral, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Jamie Morrison?" a woman's professional voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Rebecca Chun from Hartwell and Associates. I'm a real estate attorney. I'm calling because your name has come up in connection with a property dispute regarding 847 Maple Grove Road. Are you familiar with this property?" My stomach dropped. That was Dad's address. Our family home. That's my father's house. "But I don't understand. What dispute?" There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "According to our records, you're listed as the sole owner of the property. Your sister Karen Morrison and her husband Mark Stevens are attempting to sell the house, but the title search revealed your name on the deed." They were surprised by this information. The world seemed to tilt sideways. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "My name is on the deed." Yes, Ms. Morrison. It appears your father transferred the property to you approximately 18 months before his death. You are the legal owner of 847 Maple Grove Road. Your sister cannot sell it without your consent, which is why I'm calling. She's hired our firm to try to resolve this situation. I sat down heavily on my couch, my mind reeling. Dad had put the house in my name, and he'd never told me. And Karen had been living there for months, apparently under the assumption that she could just take over and sell it whenever she wanted. Ms. Morrison, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. I had no idea. My father never mentioned this to me. That's not uncommon, actually. Many parents make these arrangements without informing their children until after their death, or assume their attorney or executor will handle the communication. I'd strongly suggest you retain your own legal counsel. Your sister seems quite determined to contest this, and things could get complicated. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence for a long time. Then I did what I should have done months ago. I drove back home, back to Dad's house, to my house, and I demanded answers. The house looked different when I pulled up 3 days later. Karen had already made changes. New shutters and a color Dad would have hated, a modern mailbox replacing the hand-carved wooden one he'd made himself, and the garden he'd tended so carefully was torn up, replaced with generic landscaping rocks and shrubs arranged in geometric precision. It was as if she was systematically erasing every trace of him, turning the place into something from a home improvement catalog. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering my courage. Confrontation had never been my strength, and Karen knew exactly how to make me feel small, unreasonable, selfish. She'd been doing it since we were children. But this time, I had something I'd never had before: the law on my side and the knowledge that Dad had made a deliberate choice. Mark answered the door, his expression shifting from surprise to wariness when he saw me.
Jamie.
We weren't expecting you. I know. Is Karen here? He hesitated, and I heard Karen's voice from inside. Who is it, Mark? Then she appeared behind him, her face hardening when she saw me. Jamie, what are you doing here?
We need to talk.
About the house. About the fact that you've been living here and planning to sell it when it's actually in my name. I watched the color drain from her face, then flood back in angry red splotches. You need to come inside, she said through gritted teeth, glancing at the neighbors' houses.
Now.
She practically dragged me into the living room. Dad's living room, though it barely looked recognizable now. The worn, comfortable furniture he'd loved was gone, replaced with sleek modern pieces that looked expensive and uncomfortable. His bookshelves had been removed, the walls repainted in trendy gray instead of the warm cream he'd preferred. How dare you? Karen hissed once the door was closed. How dare you come here making accusations? Accusations? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen, you've been living in a house that doesn't belong to you. You tried to sell it. You moved in without even confirming who owned it. It's Dad's house. It belongs to the family. It belonged to Dad.
And he left it to me.
Just me. The words hung in the air between us. Mark shifted uncomfortably, and I realized he probably hadn't known the full situation either. Karen had likely assured him it was all sorted, that the house was theirs for the taking. That's not possible, Karen said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. Dad wouldn't do that. He wouldn't cut me out. There must be some mistake, or you did something. You manipulated him, didn't you? In his final months, when he was sick and vulnerable. Stop. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Just stop, Karen. I didn't even know about this until the attorney called me 3 days ago. Dad never told me. But he made this decision 18 months before he died, when he was still healthy and sharp. This wasn't a last-minute thing. He thought about it and chose to leave the house to me. She stared at me, and I could see her mind working, trying to find an angle, a way to spin this in her favor. Well, obviously, he meant for us to share it. He wouldn't have wanted to exclude me. We'll split it 50-50, and…
No.
The word came out more firmly than I'd intended, surprising even myself. Karen's eyes widened. What do you mean, no? I mean no, Karen. The house is mine. Dad left it to me for a reason, and I'm going to honor that decision. You need to move out. You can't be serious. She laughed, but it was harsh, disbelieving. Jamie, we've been living here for 3 months. We've invested money in improvements. We gave up our apartment. You can't just kick us out on the street. You moved in without asking me. You started renovations on a house that wasn't yours. Those were your choices, not mine. Mark finally spoke up, his voice careful. Maybe we could work something out? We could pay you rent, stay here for a few more months while we figure out our next move. I looked at him, seeing genuine worry in his eyes. Unlike Karen, he seemed to grasp the precariousness of their situation. I need to think about it, I said. But right now, I want to know something, Karen. Why did you just assume the house was yours? Didn't you think to check? Didn't you go through Dad's papers, his will, anything? She crossed her arms defensively. I did go through his papers. There was no will. Or, if there was, I couldn't find it. And obviously the house would go to his children equally. That's how inheritance works. Except Dad didn't wait to die to transfer the house. He did it while he was alive. And clearly, he didn't tell you because he knew you'd react exactly like this. That hit home. I saw something flicker across Karen's face. Hurt, maybe, or the realization that our father had deliberately excluded her from this decision. Why? She asked, and for the first time, her voice cracked. Why would he do that? I'm his daughter, too. I took care of him when Mom died. I visited every week. What did you do? You ran off to the city and barely called. You weren't there. So, why did he give everything to you? The accusation stung because there was a kernel of truth to it. I had moved away. I hadn't visited as often as I could have. But that hadn't been the whole story, and Karen knew it. You want to know why? I asked quietly. Think about right now, Karen. Think about how you moved in here without permission, how you were planning to sell the house without even telling me, how you packed up Dad's things and sent me a few boxes like I was some distant relative instead of his daughter. You've been treating this place like it's your property to do with as you please, and you didn't consider me once. Maybe that's why. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Isn't it? You know what the attorney told me? That you hired her to try to contest the deed. You weren't even going to tell me I owned the house. You were just going to try to take it from me legally. Because it should be mine too. The words burst out of her. I deserve this house just as much as you did. More, even. And you know what? I'm not giving up. You might have Dad's deed, but there are ways to challenge these things. Undue influence. Mental incapacity. I'll find something. I felt suddenly, profoundly tired. Do what you need to do, Karen. But you have 30 days to move out. That's more than generous given the circumstances. We'll see about that, she spat. We'll just see about that, little sister. I left then, my hands shaking as I got back in my car. Through the window, I could see Karen and Mark arguing, her hands gesturing wildly, him looking more and more defeated. I almost felt sorry for him. He'd hitched himself to Karen's wagon, and he was about to learn what that really meant. As I drove away, I made a decision. I needed to understand why Dad had done this. There had to be more to the story, some explanation he'd left behind. And I knew exactly where to look. The storage unit was in a facility on the outskirts of town, a place I'd only been to once before, years ago, when Dad was downsizing after Mom died. He'd mentioned then that he kept important papers there, things he didn't want in the house but couldn't bring himself to throw away. I'd forgotten about it until now, but suddenly it seemed crucial. I still had the key on my old keychain, a small brass thing I'd never bothered to remove. The unit itself was climate-controlled, one of the more expensive options, which should have told me Dad considered its contents valuable. The overhead light flickered on, revealing neat rows of labeled boxes, filing cabinets, and carefully wrapped furniture. This was so Dad, everything organized, everything in its place. Unlike the chaos Karen had created in the house, this space felt like him. I could almost hear his voice. A place for everything, Jamie girl, and everything in its place. I started with a filing cabinet labeled Legal Documents. Inside were folders organized by year, and I pulled out the one marked with the year he'd transferred the house. There, between insurance policies and tax returns, I found it. A copy of the deed transfer, along with a sealed envelope with my name on it in Dad's careful handwriting. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were 3 pages, front and back, filled with Dad's writing. The date at the top was from just after he'd made the transfer. "Dear Jamie," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone, and knowing your sister, she's probably made a mess of things. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for a lot of things, actually, but mostly I'm sorry that I have to explain this in a letter instead of face-to-face. But you know me, never was good with the hard conversations." I smiled through the tears already forming. That was so like him. "I've put the house in your name. Just yours, not split with Karen. I need you to understand why, and I need you to know that this decision wasn't made lightly or quickly. Your sister is going to be angry. She's going to feel hurt and excluded. And maybe part of me should feel guilty about that, but I don't. Not really. The truth is, Jamie, I've known for a long time that Karen sees things differently than you do. She sees assets, advantages, opportunities. When your mom got sick, Karen's first question wasn't about treatment options or how we'd cope. It was about life insurance policies and whether we'd updated the will. When I had my health scare 3 years ago, she showed up at the hospital with a power of attorney form already filled out, telling me it was just being practical. I know she loves me in her way, but her way always involves calculation, always involves what's in it for her. And I couldn't stand the thought of this house, your mom's house, the place where we raised you girls, where we had Christmas mornings and Sunday dinners and all those small, perfect moments that make up a life. I couldn't stand the thought of her treating it like a transaction. You, though, you're different, sweetheart. You see the value in things that can't be measured in dollars. You cried when I mentioned selling Mom's garden bench, even though it was falling apart. You kept every birthday card I ever gave you. You understand that some things matter because of what they represent, not what they're worth. This house should go to someone who'll love it, not someone who'll see it as equity to be leveraged or an asset to be liquidated. I know you're settled in the city now, and I'm not asking you to move back here. But I also know that wherever you are, you'll keep this place alive in some way. Maybe you'll visit and remember us here. Maybe you'll rent it to a family who'll make their own memories. Maybe someday you'll come back and make it yours again. Whatever you do, I trust you to do right by it. I didn't tell you about this transfer because I didn't want you to worry about it while I was still alive. I didn't want you to feel guilty or obligated or caught in the middle. And I didn't tell Karen because, well, you know your sister. She'd have made everyone miserable fighting about it, trying to change my mind, turning every conversation into a negotiation. There's money too. Split equally between you both. It's in a trust and the documentation is in this cabinet. That's fair.
But the house is yours, Jamie.
Only yours. I need you to be strong now. Karen is going to fight this. She's going to make you feel guilty, selfish, unfair. She's going to play the victim and paint herself as the wronged party. Don't let her. You are honoring my wishes, and my wishes were clear and deliberate. One more thing. In Box 7B, you'll find some photo albums and Mom's journals. I couldn't keep them in the house after she passed. Too painful, but I couldn't throw them away either.
They're yours now.
Your sister got all of Mom's jewelry and most of her clothes, though she probably doesn't remember that. She took what had monetary value. But I saved these for you, because I knew you'd treasure them. I love you, Jamie girl. I'm proud of the woman you've become. You have your mother's kindness and her strength, and I hope you have a little of my stubbornness too, because you're going to need it. Be strong. Stand firm. This is your inheritance, but more than that, it's your history. Don't let anyone take it from you. Love always, Dad. P.S. If you're wondering, I talked to Tom about all of this before I made the transfer. He agreed with my decision and witnessed the signing. If Karen tries to claim I wasn't in my right mind or was manipulated, Tom can testify otherwise. I was perfectly confident and absolutely certain. I read the letter 3 times, crying harder with each reading. It was so thoroughly Dad, practical, direct, and yet full of love. He'd known exactly what would happen. He'd anticipated Karen's reaction. And he'd left me the ammunition I needed to stand my ground. The mention of Tom was crucial. Dad's old business partner was a respected figure in town, a retired accountant known for his integrity. If it came to a legal challenge, his testimony would be invaluable. I found Box 7B and carefully lifted out the photo albums. Mom smiled at me from their pages, young and vibrant in the early photos, more worn but no less beautiful in the later ones. There were pictures of me and Karen as children, before the competitiveness and resentment had set in. We'd been close once, I remembered with a pang. When had that changed? Mom's journals were a revelation. I'd never known she kept them. Page after page of her elegant handwriting detailed daily life, worries about money, pride in her daughters, love for her husband. One entry, dated just months before her death, caught my eye. Karen visited today. She spent most of the time talking about the house value, how much equity we have, whether we'd considered a reverse mortgage. She barely asked about my treatment. Sometimes I worry that we raised her to be too focused on security, on material things. She's always been anxious about money, even when there was no need to be. I wish I could make her understand that there are things more valuable than financial security. I hope Jamie never loses that quality she has, that ability to see the beauty and meaning in things beyond their price tags. I closed the journal, feeling like Mom was speaking directly to me across the years. She'd seen it too. The difference between Karen and me wasn't just personality, it was values, priorities, the fundamental way we moved through the world. I spent hours in that storage unit, reading through documents, looking at photos, piecing together a picture of my parents' final years that I'd missed by being away. Dad's medical records showed he'd been sharper than ever during the period when he transferred the house. Financial statements revealed that he'd been meticulous about dividing the monetary assets equally between Karen and me. She'd have no grounds to claim financial favoritism. But most importantly, I found a folder labeled for my daughters. Inside were 2 more letters, one addressed to each of us, dated just a month before his death. Mine was relatively short. Jamie, by now you've found my other letter and hopefully you understand my decision. I just want to add one more thing. Don't let guilt make you give in. Your sister will try to make you feel like you're being cruel or unfair. You're not. You're respecting my wishes, and that's what matters. I love you both, but I've given each of you what suits you best. Karen got Mom's jewelry, worth considerably more than she probably realizes, the car, and her half of the money. You got the house, and the memories. That's fair, even if she can't see it. Be strong. Dad. Karen's letter was longer, and reading it felt invasive, but I needed to understand what Dad had told her. It was a gentle but firm explanation of his decision, emphasizing how much he loved her, but also expressing disappointment in how transactional their relationship had become. He'd noticed how she only called when she needed something, how she'd pushed him to sell the house and move to a smaller place so she and Mark could help manage the proceeds. The letter ended. I hope someday you'll understand that not everything is about money, Karen. I love you, but I can't trust you with this house. I just can't. I hope the money I'm leaving you helps you build the security you seem to need. But the house goes to your sister. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. I sat back, overwhelmed by the weight of Dad's words. He'd tried, in his way, to explain things to Karen, but he'd also known she wouldn't accept it, that she'd fight. And now I had to decide how to handle what came next. Karen didn't waste time. Within 2 weeks of our confrontation, I received formal legal papers. She was contesting the deed transfer on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. The allegations were brutal. She claimed I had manipulated Dad during his illness, isolated him from her, and coerced him into signing documents he didn't understand. None of it was true, and I had Dad's letters and Tom's potential testimony to prove it. But the accusations still hurt, especially the parts where she painted me as a calculating manipulator. She was accusing me of exactly the behavior Dad's letters described in her. I hired an attorney, Daniel Reeves, who came highly recommended for estate disputes. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen every family drama imaginable. I've reviewed your documentation, he said at our first meeting. The letters from your father, the timeline of the transfer, the medical records showing his competency. This is actually quite straightforward from a legal standpoint. Your sister doesn't have much of a case. Then why is she pursuing it? He gave me a knowing look. Because she's angry. And sometimes people need to exhaust all their options before they can accept reality. The question is, how do you want to handle this? We could push for immediate dismissal, which we'd likely get. Or we could try mediation, see if there's any middle ground. What kind of middle ground? Maybe she stays in the house for a fixed period while she finds other accommodations. Maybe you sell it and split the proceeds if you're willing. Maybe you keep it but buy out her perceived share with other assets. There are options if both parties are willing to compromise. I thought about Dad's letters, his clear instructions to stand firm. But I also thought about the sister I'd once been close to, before things got complicated. What would you recommend? Honestly, I'd recommend trying mediation first. Not because I think she has a legitimate claim, but because family is family. If there's any chance to resolve this without completely destroying your relationship, it's worth trying. But you need to go in with clear boundaries. Don't let guilt make you give away what's rightfully yours. The mediation was scheduled for a month later. In the meantime, I had to deal with the practical reality that Karen and Mark were still living in my house. My attorney sent them a formal notice that they were staying as month-to-month tenants and would need to vacate within 90 days. Karen's attorney responded with a motion to delay any eviction proceedings until the ownership dispute was resolved. It was exhausting and expensive, and I found myself resenting every billable hour, every piece of paperwork, every hostile email from Karen's lawyer. This wasn't what Dad would have wanted, not the fighting anyway. But he'd also been clear that I shouldn't back down. Tom called me one evening, about 6 weeks into the legal proceedings. "Jamie, I heard about what's going on. I wanted you to know I'm here if you need me. Your dad talked to me about that transfer many times. He was absolutely certain about his decision. Would you be willing to testify to that if it comes to it?" "Absolutely. I've already given a statement to your attorney. But I also wanted to talk to you about something else. Have you considered what you actually want to do with the house?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you planning to move back? Rent it out? Sell it eventually? Because your dad mentioned to me once that he hoped you might come back someday, but he also understood if you didn't. He just didn't want Karen to gut it and flip it, which is what she'd told him she planned to do."
That was news to me.
Karen actually told Dad she wanted to flip the house. "Oh yes. About 2 years ago. She and Mark came to visit and spent the whole time talking about the real estate market, how much the house would be worth with some renovations, how they could make a tidy profit if they managed the estate properly." I think that conversation was what really made up your dad's mind about the transfer. I felt a surge of anger at Karen for being so callous, but also a strange sense of clarity. I'd been so focused on the legal battle that I hadn't really thought about what I wanted. Did I want to keep the house? Move back? It was a big decision and one I'd been avoiding. "I don't know yet," I admitted to Tom. "The house means a lot to me, but my life is in the city now. My job, my friends, everything." "Then maybe that's what you need to figure out before you make any deals with your sister. Know what you want, independent of what she wants or what anyone thinks you should do." After that conversation, I did some soul searching. I visited the house again, entering with my own key this time, over Karen's protests, and walked through the rooms, really seeing them for the first time since Dad died. Karen's renovations were superficial and could be undone. Underneath, the house was still the same, still home. I realized something important. I didn't want to live there full-time, not right now. But I also didn't want to lose it. The house represented continuity, history, a connection to my parents that I wasn't ready to sever. Maybe someday I'd return. Maybe I'd have children who would visit their grandparents' house, even though their grandparents were gone. Maybe it would just be a place I visited on holidays and weekends, a retreat from city life. But it was mine to decide. And that was what mattered. The mediation session arrived like a storm on the horizon. We met in a neutral conference room, Karen and her attorney on one side of the table, me and Daniel on the other, with a mediator at the head. Karen looked thin and stressed, and I felt a pang of sympathy despite everything. The mediator, a woman named Patricia Simmons, started with ground rules. We're here to find a solution that works for everyone, not to litigate the legal issues. Let's start by hearing what each party wants and needs. Karen went first, and listening to her was painful. She talked about feeling betrayed by Dad, excluded and rejected. She talked about the sacrifices she'd made, the time she'd spent with him while I was away. She got emotional describing how she'd imagined raising her future children in that house, how she'd seen it as her security and her future. Some of it was genuine, I thought. Underneath the manipulation and calculation, there was real hurt. But then she got to her demands, and the sympathy evaporated. She wanted half the house's value, plus compensation for the improvements she'd made, plus permission to stay for 6 more months rent-free while she found alternative housing. When it was my turn, I spoke more quietly, but no less firmly. I explained Dad's wishes as expressed in his letters. I talked about the storage unit, the documentation, his clear mental competency. And then I made my own offer. I'll give you 3 months to find a new place, I said. Rent-free. That's generous given that you moved in without permission and tried to sell property that wasn't yours. I'll also give you first choice of any furniture or items from the house that Dad didn't specifically leave to me in his letters. But I'm not selling, and I'm not giving you half the value. The house is mine, and it's staying mine. Patricia turned to me. Is there any compromise you'd consider? Any financial component? I thought about it carefully. Dad left us equal shares of money in a trust. That was his version of fair. If Karen can prove she needs additional financial help, genuine need, not just desire, I might consider a small settlement for my portion. But not half the house's value. Nothing close to that. Karen's face twisted with anger. This is ridiculous. I'm his daughter too. And Dad left you an inheritance too, I said steadily. It's not my fault you've already spent yours in your head. That was apparently too much truth. Karen stood up abruptly. I'm not accepting this. I'll take it to court. I'll fight this until there's nothing left to fight over. Her attorney put a hand on her arm. Mrs. Stevens, maybe we should.
No.
No compromise. If she won't be reasonable, then we'll let a judge decide. She stormed out, Mark trailing behind her with an apologetic look in my direction. The mediation was over in less than an hour. The court case never happened. 3 weeks after the failed mediation, Karen's attorney withdrew from the case. Daniel explained that this usually meant one of 2 things. Either the client couldn't pay anymore, or the attorney realized there was no case worth pursuing. In Karen's situation, it was probably both. The discovery process had revealed just how weak her position was. Dad's medical records showed no cognitive decline. Tom's testimony was unshakable. The timeline proved that the transfer happened well before any illness, during a period when Dad was actively managing his finances and making other sound decisions. Even the renovation receipts Karen submitted actually hurt her case. She'd spent thousands of dollars on changes to a property she didn't own, which suggested she'd never bothered to verify ownership in the first place. Without an attorney, Karen couldn't proceed with the lawsuit. She'd have to represent herself, and Daniel assured me that no judge would take her claims seriously given the evidence. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. Mark called me on a Thursday evening. Jamie, I need to talk to you. Alone. Can we meet somewhere? We agreed on a coffee shop halfway between the city and town. When I arrived, Mark looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual neat appearance was rumpled. Thank you for meeting me, he said as I sat down. I know things are complicated between you and Karen right now. That's one way to put it.
He winced.
I owe you an apology. Several, actually. I should have questioned things more when Karen said the house was ours. I should have insisted we check the legal status before moving in. I let her rush us into this because... He paused, looking uncomfortable. Because she was so certain, and I didn't want to start our marriage by doubting her. You're married? 3 months ago. Small ceremony, just before your dad died. We were planning to tell the family afterward, but then everything happened so fast. That explained some of Karen's urgency. New husband, new life, wanting to establish themselves in a house they saw as their inheritance.
I'm sorry I didn't know, I said.
Congratulations, I guess. Thanks. But that's not why I asked you here. I need to tell you something about Karen, something she doesn't know I'm sharing. She's going to be furious, but you deserve to know the truth. I waited, my coffee cooling in my hands. About 6 months before your dad died, Karen approached him with a proposal. She wanted him to take out a reverse mortgage on the house and give her half the money. She told him it was for fertility treatments, that we were desperate to start a family and needed help. She was very emotional about it, very convincing. My stomach sank. Dad never mentioned this. That's because he didn't tell you. But he told me later. He refused her request, said the house was too important to risk. Karen was furious. She accused him of not caring about her future, about his future grandchildren. Things were really tense between them after that. And here's the thing, Jamie, the fertility treatments? They weren't urgent. We weren't even trying yet. Karen just wanted the money. I felt like I'd been punched. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been watching her these past months, seeing how obsessed she's become with this house. The legal fees are draining our savings. She can't sleep, can't focus on anything else. And yesterday, I found something. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of an email. She's been in contact with real estate developers. She'd already gotten estimates on what the house would be worth if we demolished it and split the lot into 2 smaller properties. She was planning to tear down your parents' house, Jamie. Not renovate it, not live in it, destroy it, and cash in. The words on the screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. This was worse than I'd imagined. Karen hadn't just wanted to sell the house. She'd wanted to erase it entirely. I can't be part of this anymore, Mark said quietly. I love my wife, but this isn't who I thought she was. This isn't who I want to be married to. I'm done fighting your father's wishes, and I'm done pretending this is about anything other than money. What are you going to do? I'm moving out. I've already started looking for an apartment. I wanted to tell you first, because Karen's going to blame you for this too. But this is my decision. Our marriage, it's not going to survive this. I see that now. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt guilty, like I was somehow responsible for breaking up their marriage. But the rational part knew that Karen had done this to herself. I'm sorry, Mark. I really am. Don't be. You're doing the right thing. Your dad was a good man, and he made his choice for good reasons. Karen just can't accept that sometimes she doesn't get what she wants. He stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. In the basement of the house, there's a locked cabinet in your dad's old workshop. Karen couldn't get it open and assumed it was just old tools. But your dad told me once that there was something in there for you. The key is taped under the 3rd drawer of his workbench. After Mark left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time, processing everything he told me. The fertility treatment lie, the demolition plans, the depth of Karen's willingness to manipulate everyone around her, including our dying father. It was almost too much to bear. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. Dad had known. Maybe not all the details, but he'd understood Karen's nature in a way I'd been reluctant to see. His letters suddenly made even more sense. This wasn't about favoritism or love. It was about stewardship. He'd given the house to the daughter who would protect it, not profit from it. That weekend, I drove back to the house. Karen's car was gone. Mark had told me she was visiting a friend out of state, trying to clear her head. I let myself in with my key and went straight to the basement. Dad's workshop was exactly as I remembered it, though covered in dust now. The smell of wood and oil brought back 1,000 memories, helping him build bookshelves for my room, learning to sand properly, the comfortable silence of working side by side. I found the workbench and felt under the 3rd drawer. The key was there, wrapped in tape. The locked cabinet was in the corner, and my hands shook as I opened it. Inside were more letters, photographs, and a small wooden box with my name carved into the lid. Dad had made it himself. I could tell from the craftsmanship. Inside the box was a collection of things. My baby bracelet from the hospital, a drawing I'd made in kindergarten, my high school graduation tassel, and a flash drive. I took everything upstairs and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It contained video files, dated over the last 2 years of Dad's life. My heart pounding, I opened the first one. Dad appeared on screen, sitting in his workshop. He looked older than I remembered, thinner, but his eyes were clear and alert. "Hi, Jamie girl," he said, and I burst into tears at the sound of his voice. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. I'm sorry, I'm not there to help you deal with what I imagine is a pretty complicated situation with your sister. I wanted to record these to explain some things I couldn't say in letters." Over the next hour, I watched all 6 videos. In them, Dad explained his reasoning for the house transfer in his own words. He talked about specific incidents with Karen, not just the reverse mortgage request, but years of smaller things. How she'd pressured him to move to a retirement home so she could rent out the house. How she'd suggested he might want to simplify his life by getting rid of Mom's things so she could take them. How every visit seemed to include a financial proposition of some kind. But he also talked about me. About the times I'd come home just to sit with him in silence. About how I'd helped him sort through Mom's garden, crying together over her favorite roses. About the way I'd respected his grief instead of trying to fix it or manage it. "I don't love Karen any less," he said in the final video. "But I can't trust her with the things that matter most to me. This house is my history, mine and your mother's. It's where we raised you girls, where we built our life. Karen sees square footage and market value. You see home. That's the difference, and that's why the house goes to you." He leaned closer to the camera, his expression intense. "Don't feel guilty, Jamie. Don't let her make you doubt this decision. You are honoring my wishes. You are protecting what your mother and I built. And if you decide someday that you don't want to keep it, that's okay too. It's yours to do with as you choose. But make that choice on your own terms, not because Karen guilt you into it." The videos ended with him saying he loved me and was proud of me. I sat in the empty house, crying and feeling his presence around me in a way I hadn't since the funeral. 2 days later, Karen returned. She found me in the house, packing up some of Dad's things I wanted to keep, his tools, his notebooks, the photographs from the workshop cabinet. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Packing. This is my house, Karen. I'm allowed to be here." "Mark left me," she said abruptly. "He moved out. He told me it was because of this whole situation, because I couldn't let it go. Are you happy now? You've destroyed my marriage." I turned to face her. "I didn't destroy your marriage. Your obsession with this house did. Your inability to accept Dad's decision did. Mark told me about the demolition plans, Karen. About how you were going to tear down this house and split the lot." Her face paled. "He had no right to. He had every right. And it proved everything Dad said about you in his letters. You want to know why he left the house to me? Because he knew you'd do exactly this. Reduce it to nothing but $signs. That's not fair. I needed that money. Mark and I were planning. You were planning to use money you didn't have. Money from a house that wasn't yours. And you lied to Dad about fertility treatments to try to get him to take out a reverse mortgage. How is any of that fair, Karen?" She flinched.
"Who told you that?"
"Does it matter? It's true, isn't it?" She was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "I didn't need that money. Mark and I wanted to start a business. We wanted to have security, a future. Is that so wrong?"
"No."
But manipulating Dad was wrong. Moving into this house without permission was wrong. Trying to sell it was wrong. Hiring a lawyer to contest Dad's clear wishes was wrong. And planning to demolish our childhood home for a profit, that was the worst of all. "You always were Dad's favorite," she said bitterly. "That's not true, and you know it. Dad loved us equally. But he trusted us differently, and you know why. When was the last time you visited him without asking for something? When was the last time you called just to talk, not because you needed money or advice or help with something?" She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. We both knew the truth. "I'm giving you 2 more months," I said finally. 2 months to find a place and move out. After that, I'm filing for eviction, if necessary. Take whatever furniture you want that wasn't specifically left to me. I'll send you a list. But the house itself? That's not negotiable. I could still fight this in court. You could. But you'd lose, and you'd spend money you don't have on lawyers who'll tell you the same thing. Or you could accept reality and move on with your life. Karen stood there for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. Maybe it was acceptance. Maybe it was just exhaustion. I hate that you won, she said. This wasn't a competition, Karen. It was never supposed to be. Everything with us has always been a competition. You just never wanted to admit it. Maybe she was right. Maybe that had been the problem all along. She'd been competing while I'd just been trying to be her sister. I found Dad's videos, I said quietly. He explained everything. Why he made the choice he did. What he hoped for both of us. He said he didn't love you any less. But he couldn't trust you with this. I don't want to hear it. You need to hear it. Because maybe if you understand, we can eventually move past this. I don't want to lose my sister over a house. You already lost me, she said. The day Dad chose you over me, you lost me. She walked out then, and I let her go. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of my house, truly mine now, in every sense, and watched the sun set over the garden. I'd restored Mom's roses, rebuilt Dad's workshop bench, and repainted the walls in their original warm cream. The house looked like itself again. Karen had moved out 2 months earlier, taking minimal furniture and leaving no forwarding address. Mark had called once to check in and let me know they were divorcing. He sounded sad but relieved. I decided to keep the house, but not move back full-time. Instead, I spent weekends here, slowly renovating and restoring. I'd also opened Dad's workshop to local kids interested in woodworking, a free program running twice a month in his memory. It felt right, honoring him by passing on what he'd loved. The trust money had been divided as Dad specified, equal shares. Karen had gotten hers and immediately disappeared from my life. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement of birthdays or holidays. Part of me grieved for the sister I'd lost, but a larger part knew this was necessary. We were too different, wanted two different things. Tom visited often, helping with repairs and sharing stories about Dad. He'd become like family, a surrogate uncle who understood what this place meant. Your dad would be proud of you, he said during one of his visits, watching me sand down an old cabinet. You stood your ground. I almost didn't. There were moments when I thought about just giving in, splitting everything with Karen to keep the peace. But you didn't. Because you understood that some things are worth fighting for. Not for their monetary value, but for what they represent. That was it exactly. The house wasn't just property. It was memory, history, love made tangible. It was every birthday party and holiday dinner, every quiet morning and raucous family gathering. It was Mom's laughter in the kitchen and Dad's careful craftsmanship in every corner. It was my childhood and my parents' entire adult life. Karen had seen 4 walls and a profitable lot. I saw home. My phone buzzed with a text from a friend asking if I wanted to get dinner in the city later. I smiled, realizing that I'd found a balance I didn't know I needed: city life during the week, this sanctuary on weekends. The best of both worlds, thanks to Dad's foresight. I picked up my phone to reply, then paused. At the edge of the property, partially hidden by trees, a car was parked. As I watched, Karen got out. She looked different, thinner, her hair shorter, dressed in a way I didn't recognize. She stood by the car for several minutes, just staring at the house. Then slowly she approached. I know I'm not welcome here, she said when she reached the porch steps. I just wanted to see it one more time. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to send her away, protect this space from her toxicity. But another part, the part that remembered being children together, that remembered loving her before everything got complicated, wanted to hear what she had to say. Do you want to come in? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. We sat in the living room, now restored to how it had been when our parents were alive. Karen looked around with an expression I couldn't quite read. It looks good, she said finally. Like it used to. That's what I was going for. I saw the sign outside. Dad's workshop. Community woodworking program.
Yeah.
Kids come twice a month to learn. It's free. I figured Dad would like that, his tools being used to teach others. She nodded slowly.
He would have.
Silence stretched between us, uncomfortable but not quite hostile. I'm sorry, she said abruptly. I'm sorry for how I acted, for the lawsuit, for everything. I was so angry, and I felt so betrayed. But I've had time to think, and I realize Dad was right. I would have sold this place. Probably torn it down, just like Mark told you. I was seeing dollar signs, not memories. What changed? I asked carefully. Therapy, mostly. And hitting rock bottom. The divorce, losing my savings on legal fees, having to move back into an apartment alone. It forced me to look at myself, at my priorities. I didn't like what I saw. Karen, let me finish.
Please.
I need to say this. She took a shaky breath. I've been jealous of you my whole life. You were always Dad's favorite, even if he tried to hide it. You were the creative one, the thoughtful one. I was just the practical daughter who knew how to balance a checkbook. And I resented you for it, even though it wasn't your fault. Dad didn't have favorites. I started, but she cut me off.
He did.
Not in love, maybe, but in understanding. He got you in a way he never got me. And I know why, we're too different. He saw me trying to monetize everything, including his house, and it disappointed him. I disappointed him. And instead of trying to change, I doubled down. I made it worse.
I didn't know what to say.
This was the most honest Karen had been with me in years, maybe ever. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued. And I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. Why he did it. Why you fought to keep it. And I'm glad you did. Seeing it like this, seeing what you've done with his workshop, it's what he would have wanted. You were the right choice. She stood to leave, and I found myself standing too. Karen, wait. She turned, her expression guarded. Thank you for saying that. And for what it's worth. I miss my sister. Not the person you became when you were fighting me, but the person I grew up with. Her eyes filled with tears. I miss her too. I'm trying to find her again. Maybe, I said carefully, when you do, we could try again. Not go back to how things were, but build something new. I'd like that. Someday. She left then, and I watched her car disappear down the road. I didn't know if we'd ever truly reconcile, if the damage between us could be repaired. But for the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, eventually, we could at least find peace. I went back to my restoration work, sanding and painting, restoring and preserving. Each stroke of the brush, each smooth section of wood, felt like a conversation with Dad, an ongoing dialogue about what matters and what lasts. The house was mine. But more than that, it was a trust, a responsibility to honor what came before, while building something for what came next. Dad had understood that. And now, finally, so did I. As the sun set, and I locked up to head back to the city, I paused at the door, running my hand over the frame Dad had installed decades ago. Thank you, I whispered to the empty house, to his memory, to the choice he'd made that had forced me to become stronger than I'd known I could be. The house stood solid and warm behind me, full of light and love and carefully preserved memories. It would be here next weekend and all the weekends after, a constant in a changing world, a home in the truest sense. And that, I realized, was the real inheritance Dad had left me. Not just property, but purpose. Not just a house, but a legacy of love worth fighting for.